Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Tuesday, July the 28th, 2020.
Realistically, knowing who Bill Barr is and that he has shown up voluntarily, do you think today is going to be some massive aha great reveal?
I sure hope so, Steph, but I suspect we're going to see Attorney General Bill Barr grapple with a lot of words and phrases, both as an effort to sort of misdirect Congress when they're asking questions and just to buy time, just to delay. But, there are at least a couple of really important questions at this moment in time that they need to press him on. One is this incessant claim by President Trump that voting by mail is rife with fraud. President Trump has been doing everything he can to undermine the prospect of the citizens being allowed to vote by mail in November. I would ask Bill Barr, how many times in the last 5 years or 10 years has the Department of Justice prosecuted a fraudulent voter by mail? And I'm betting, Steph, the answer is zero or very close to zero. And we can take that data, if we can wrestle it out of Bill Barr and use it to put the lie to Donald Trump's incessive claim that voting by mail is rife with fraud.
No offense, but isn't that a complete colossal waste of time? We already know that Bill Barr told New York Times Magazine a month ago that foreign adversaries could be printing millions of fake ballots. He's already sowing the seeds, so come November, President Trump could possibly say, see, this isn't legitimate. And we know at this very moment, Don Jr., the president's son, has had his Twitter account temporarily suspended for spreading conspiracy theories and lies. Do you actually think today is going to be the day when Bill Barr is going to say, you're right, this whole voter fraud thing is nonsense?
Yeah, Bill Barr is not going to throw up his hands and say, you got me. But that's why they can make any claim they want. They can claim the Chinese are going to interfere in our election, which is a narrative they're trying to sell in advance of the November election, so that when and if Trump loses in a landslide, Bill Barr is going to claim the Chinese interfered. They can say whatever they want. That's why we need to extract data from Bill Barr, like exactly how many prosecutions have you brought for fraudulent voting by mail? If the answer is none, they can run to their phones and tweet later on today all they want. The data will belie their claims and expose their lies.
You just heard the voices of MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle and the legal analyst Glenn Kirshner, talking about the kinds of things that Donald Trump and Attorney General Bill Barr are doing right now to sabotage and upend this November election. It has been obvious from the start, of course, that Donald Trump and people in his administration will do anything to subvert, steal, disrupt, intimidate, and sabotage an election, and then turn around and point at other people as the cause of that sabotage. Donald Trump, Bill Barr, and members of the administration will do anything to ensure that Donald Trump steals another election, stays in the White House, and continues to commit crimes. It is about time that people who have larger platforms, far larger than I do, start to speak up about this. And certainly there are some who actually are doing that. But I mean people who have access to the corporate news media, who you see on every day, giving their opinion about this, that, or the other. They are the ones who need to raise their voices, and some are doing it slowly but surely. We've had mayors doing it. The Seattle mayor, Jenny Durkin, yesterday on Rachel Maddow's show on MSNBC, flat out said, this is military law, martial law that's being invoked by Trump. This is where he is heading to. And I agree with the mayor. I agree with Mayor Durkan. Mayor Durkan has been under fire lately, for lack of a better word, because of some of the things she's done or things she hasn't done in Seattle. But she got this absolutely right yesterday, that Donald Trump is pushing martial law. This is exactly what he's doing. And this is why I keep saying that language is important. And we just need to cut to the chase here and stop using the flowery language. And last night, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan cut to the chase. She literally did say, this is what he's doing. This is martial law. He is moving in that direction. And that is exactly what he is doing. This is martial law. And this is a test run for that, which is in essence really what Jenny Durkan, the mayor, was saying. This is absolutely playing out right before your eyes. And I think it's important to make that very clear to people. And I don't think, and I've said this before here, I do not think that really good authors and scholars and intellectuals should be getting on television talking about performance art. Performative authoritarianism, performative fascism. Whether it is or not, quite frankly. I mean, let's cut to the chase here. Let's not soften this any. Let's not be euphemistic. Let's not ease this information into the public. You need to blast us with the truth. We've been, Lord knows, we've been blasted and bombarded with lies for the better part of nearly 4 years now under this rogue imposter in the White House. I think that the very least we can do is get a dose of truth, like John Lennon once said. All I want is the truth. Just give me the truth. Welcome back. Well, very simply put, the episode today is going to focus on the election because we are now 98 days away from the presidential election. And I have actually done 4 states, and 2 of them actually were done yesterday, but I did not post them, so I will incorporate them into this episode. And those 2 states that you will be hearing during the course of this episode, the first 2 you will hear are the A states. Now, I did on Sunday Alabama and Alaska. Yesterday, I did Arizona and Arkansas, and those are the 2 states that will be incorporated into today's episode. So you will hear Arkansas and Arizona today, and also today you will hear California and Colorado. So it's going to be 4 states today, and that will be 6 in these 3 days, and we will get through, I promise, I'll get through all 50 states by August the 17th or 18th, there or thereabouts. But whatever you do, before your state is even called, you can obviously search your state now. You do not have to, I know that you're not waiting to hear me get to your state. That's not what this is. This is to produce a record for you so that if you need to refer back to this, you can do so. And I urge you to not wait. You must do this right now. And this is the key point I want to make here before I go any further. Right now, with the clip I played to start this, where there's obviously a major disinformation, lying, gaslighting campaign going on, which has been going on now for a long time with Trump and with Bill Barr, to confuse people, to suggest that, it's voter fraud. And as you heard Glenn Kirshner say, the Congress needs to ask Bill Barr, who is testifying today before the House Judiciary Committee, they need to ask him what and how many prosecutions he has done on voter fraud. As I have said to you before, Professor Carol Anderson has cited some research where of 1 billion votes cast, 1 billion voters between 2000 and 2014, there were only 31 instances of voter fraud. 31. You have more of a chance of being struck by lightning. So that's what Kirshner wants from Bill Barr, the Attorney General. He wants Barr to be asked by Congress in this hearing, how many prosecutions have you done on voter fraud? And voter fraud is a complete fallacy, is what I'm saying. Why I quoted Professor Carol Anderson. And Professor Anderson from Emory University, she has written such books, among others, as One Person, No Vote, and White Rage. Those are the two of the books that she has written. She's written other books as well, but those are two of the ones that I know of, I've read, and I think you should too. Those are really good books, and I highly recommend them. She's also on Twitter as well. You can look her up on Twitter. I think she's Prof. C. Anderson or something. But anyway, Carol Anderson, the professor at Emory University, really good information from her there as far as I'm concerned. And so Glenn Kirshner talks about that and talks about this idea that, where's this voter fraud? It's completely fictitious. So park that to one side. What you really need to know, even before I go through these states, is that you must, if you're going to vote absentee this year, apply for your mail-in ballot right now. Ask for it. In fact, I would call up your Secretary of State in your state, or I would call your Board of Elections in your state. I would look that up online right now and call and ask for your mail-in ballot. If necessary, go down to your local government's residence, whether, City Hall in your city, wherever City Hall is in your town. If you can, go there in person and ask to speak to someone at the Board of Elections, or ask to speak to someone in that area in elections, and request and ask for a ballot, a mail-in ballot. Because we have had so many issues across this country of people calling talk shows that I have listened to and said, hey, I have not received my ballot. During the primaries earlier this year, I did not receive my mail-in ballot. What I am concerned about, and what you should be concerned about, is that your mail-in ballot will not get to you in time for November 3rd. And with the reports of Trump slowing down the mail, this is really serious what Donald Trump is doing to this country. He's destroying the country. He's destroying the governmental apparatus and the procedural infrastructures. Now, as I've told you before in episodes numerous to this one, the infrastructure of this country started to be destroyed under Ronald Reagan. This did not just start here under Donald Trump in 2020. This has been going on now for 40 years. What we're seeing now is a culmination of this, and getting the wrong, in quotes, and really you didn't even have to have the quotes around this, getting the wrong person into the White House, and you see the destructive results that are being produced right now. Slowing down the mail. By the way, can you check your mail? Can you look at your mail and notice? I actually have noticed this here in California. There's been a slowdown in the mail. And part of it is two things. One, the Republican Senate has not agreed to the bill that the House passed that would give the postal workers and the Postal Service a lifeline. They proposed very, very small amounts. the Treasury and Bill Barr and Donald Trump, they all, you only get 10 million or 10 billion, when the post office really needs a whole lot more than that. Donald Trump wants to privatize the post office. There's no secret about that. He's openly railed and complained about that, and about the postal service, and doesn't want to see Amazon get near it. And it's just a bunch of nonsense, because Amazon's being used as an excuse. Amazon has crushed competition everywhere, and Donald Trump's putting on this hissy fit about Amazon. And the Postal Service better get his act together. And I mean, this is what Republicans love to do. They love to say that things are rigged, and they're the ones rigging them. And then they turn around and go, hey, look over there. These Democrats did it. These Democrats are the ones that rigged it. And because the Democrats are so terrible at defending themselves and are not aggressive enough, some of what Donald Trump and these Republicans say stick. Some of these lies actually stick with some people, because the Democrats are not robust enough. The Democrats are obsessed with presenting to the world that they are right, rather than calling out and condemning sufficiently and strongly enough these liars on the Republican side and the liar in the White House. They sit there and stumble and bumble and do not take full use of their power in the House. And I think that, quite frankly, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, has really, really done really little since this impeachment that she successfully masterminded in 2019. Since late 2019, I think her leadership has been wanting. Her leadership has been wanting, and now she faces a challenge this November to a progressive named Shahid Buttar, and he's had to fend off these allegations, I guess, of harassment. But he's put out a full statement about that, or at least people have around him. So that's a whole nother thing, and I don't know if that's people playing dirty or if he did do this or not. I have no idea. I've been trying to get in touch with him now for the last few months, let alone, not even just about this thing, but about a lot of other things. I had only just learned of these allegations a couple of days ago, literally. But the point I'm making here is that the Democrats need to be stronger. But in the meantime, as they fumble around with their power and flaff around with it and faff around, and they're not sure what they're doing, and it just doesn't look good. There's not an aggressive person out there who is standing. I mean, there are some. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, all in Congress. They stand up and fight. Rashida Tlaib stands up and fights. There are others, but the four of these congresswomen came to mind immediately, because this is what they do. And I think every one of them is going to be reelected, and I would urge people in those respective districts for the four congresswomen I've just mentioned to make sure you donate and vote. But the thing you've got to take away from all of this stuff, and people talk about, well, will Donald leave? Will he leave? Listen, he's going to be pushed out of there regardless. He's going to. What we need to be focusing on now is November 3rd. What we need to be focusing on now is not January 20th, 2021. We need to be focusing on November 3rd. And all this media talk about will he leave, will he not? We'll get to that when and if Joe Biden wins. And I think Joe Biden will win. I've said this for a long time, that the Democratic nominee, whoever that was going to win this election coming up. The only question was going to be, by how much? We cannot start getting distracted. And I've noticed that there have been a number of distraction points, whether it's Kanye West, whether it's, is Donald Trump going to leave or not? Whether it's, Donald Trump is going to do this or Donald Trump's going to do that. Nobody is talking about the infrastructure of voting. Nobody. I mean, what's happening is people are saying, well, are there going to be federal troops put that has come up. John Harmon talked about this last week, and he talked about it very well, as did I. But the real focus right now for you and I, if you are a voter in the United States, is to, right now, if you are not going to be voting in person, there are two things you must do. One of them is to have a plan. As I repeatedly say, right now, as we head toward August, right now, you've got to have a plan to vote. And I'm not talking about who you're going to vote for. I'm talking about procedurally, what will you do if something happens or if it doesn't? You need to be ready psychologically for what could happen if you are particularly in a state where they have worked, the Republicans, very hard to disrupt your vote and take it from you. The two big things you've got to do, aside from having the voting plan, is check your registration daily, or rather weekly. Check your registration weekly, I would say, once a week through the end of October. Calendar it. Put a note in your calendar, your phone calendar. Have your, set an alarm so that when that particular date comes, beep, the alarm sounds, you look at your calendar, your phone, boom. Oh, check your registration. Do it the way you would with anything else when you calendar something. Just you do the same thing for, I need to check my voter registration. Boom. Checking your voter registration online, and hopefully you do have internet access. It will take literally seconds. And I don't think you can check your registration over the phone. So I think for obvious reasons. But you need to go online and do this. And that's one thing you need to do. Second thing you need to do is make sure you are registered to vote if you haven't already been. Which is part of the reason I am doing these states daily. Because those people in those states need to be alert to this, because these deadlines for these primaries, there's still a few primaries to go, and some of those deadlines have passed. But for the November 3rd general election, you need to be well aware of the deadlines. And the other crucial thing is vote early. If you are still worried about the mail, because the mail is taking so long, the mail has taken a long time. Do you notice you get less mail? Some of that's due to what's going on at the post office and also the Postmaster General, this crony that Donald Trump put in about 2 months ago now, or whenever it was, who has nothing to do with post office, has really no experience. He's the Postmaster General. He's a crony, and he is there to do the bidding of Donald Trump, not the bidding of the country. And obviously there have been directives from Donald Trump to slow down the mail, and that's what's happening. There were stories about this yesterday on MSNBC, specifically on MSNBC's Chris Hayes show, All In with Chris Hayes, on Monday night, July the 27th, 2020. There is a segment in that program where Chris Hayes discusses this whole issue of Trump literally slowing down the mail, and Judy Beard, I believe her name is, spelt the way it sounds, the last name, and her first name is Judy. Judy Beard, who is a former Postmaster General herself, or at least the former head of the Post Office, the U.S. Postal Service, I don't quite remember which, was on talking about this, that this is really happening right now in the United States, that postal workers have been ordered to not attend to the mail. Let the mail sit there for another half a day. Come and do it tomorrow. Don't worry about it. They've been told by their supervisors not to attend to the mail. And apparently people are complaining about not receiving ballots. They've had their mail slowed down so that it takes a full week and a half to 2 weeks. Round trip, 2 weeks. Sending out your mail to a place and then receiving back something takes a full 2 weeks now in the United States in many cases. I mean, this is really bad stuff. This is Donald Trump using every available resource he can to throttle your voting. That's literally what he's doing. He's destroying the apparatus. He's breaking, quite frankly, this is a violation of federal law. To interfere with the mail, to tamper with the mail. This is a tampering. Now, obviously they're not opening the mail, but you're tampering with the process. And surely that's a violation of law. I know it is a violation of law, federal law. You can't tamper with the mail. And part of the mail is the process of delivering it. If you attack a postal worker in this country, that is a felony. You're going to be going to prison for more than a year. The mail carrier is the instrument, the instrumentality of delivering the mail. Without that person, unless we have robots, and there are robots and drones delivering Amazon packages, unless we have that kind of automated scenario, which we really don't want any more of in this country because people get laid off their jobs, unless we have that, the only way that you can get your mail is through a human being either walking it right into your building, driving up to your building and walking it. I mean, these are the ways you get your mail. And if those particular individuals, if the mail carriers and mail sorters, right, specifically the mail sorters, are told not to sort the mail, leave it for another day, then yes, there's going to be delays in you getting your ballot. And quite frankly, delays in you getting anything. This is all part of a plan to destabilize the election and to suppress your vote. This is what's going on. Not voter fraud. It's Trump fraud. That's what's going on in this country. Trump fraud. And he is committing crimes left, right, and center. So we shouldn't be concerned right now, at least, about will he leave or not. Can we get Joe Biden in office first? Can we get this Senate Democratic first? Can we get these governors Democratic? Can we get the House Democratic and make sure it stays that way? Can we get your local races in your city and your state Democratic? Can we get that to happen first on November 3rd before we talk about January the 20th? I mean, who does that? Who does that in late July? Talk about January 20th. What if he doesn't leave? You've already presumed that he's going to lose, and nothing should be taken for granted in July. I don't care how many polls there are that tell you Joe Biden is up by the... I keep telling you, you've got to vote. Donald Trump is strangling every avenue of your opportunity to vote. Whether it is by intimidation, with this trial run of intimidation that we've seen, whether it's in Portland or Seattle, whether it was in Lafayette Park at the beginning of last month, in D.C., we've seen this all over the country, these federal jackbooted thugs with no ID, no tags, no nothing, renditioning people. This is all fascism and intimidation done with the eye toward trying to keep Donald Trump in the White House because he's a criminal and he knows he's going to jail the second that he leaves that office. Everything is being done toward re-election, or re-stealing, I should say. And as you know well, this coronavirus is the biggest thing. Nobody wants to say this out loud on the corporate news media, cable, TV shows. Nobody wants to dare say this, that Donald Trump is allowing 150,000 plus people in this country to die so that he can help his chances at keeping his place in the White House. Nobody will dare say that on camera. Nobody has, at least to the best of my knowledge. And I'm talking about on camera in the corporate news media. They may have said this in progressive media, but they have not said this on CNN or MSNBC or any of those corporate news television networks. The biggest reason why this is happening, why Donald Trump has turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to the coronavirus in general, is simply because he figures, I think, because this is how sick and twisted and pathological and sociopathic he is. He has, and psychopathic. He has decided, well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to put out the Defense Production Act in full, because my calculation is, and this is what I think he's thinking, that if I can get away with 200,000 people dead, 500,000 people dead, 1 million people dead in the United States, then that's a great voter suppression tactic. Heck, they can't vote if they're dead. Welcome back. So request an absentee ballot and make sure you get one. Demand your mail-in ballot. Just keep it like that. Let's just keep it simple, because there are efforts to confuse things. So make sure that you, right now in July, apply for an absentee ballot. In fact, go to your Secretary of State or go to your Board of Elections and ask for one. Literally, ask for one. If you can. I mean, look, we still have a pandemic in this country and around the world. So that's got to be very important. And if you're someone who wants to avoid going out and voting in public, obviously, then you obviously want to do this. You want to get an absentee ballot, a mail-in ballot, rather. They're essentially the same thing. They are. I mean, I just want to try to stick to one message, because people get confused. There's a lot of confusion out there. And it's bad enough you've got someone lying in the White House perpetually, daily. So please ask for a mail-in ballot now. Make sure you get one now. Whether it's applying for one online, whether it's calling up your local Board of Elections or calling up your Secretary of State, please do that now. Don't wait around. This is critical now. This part of the middle of the summer is critical, because this is the time where people, usually go to sleep, usually are on holiday, on vacation or something, usually. And you've got a convention, the Democratic convention, coming up in just over 3 weeks, or roughly 3 weeks. You really do have to, and it's about 3 weeks away. You have to, right now, get that mail-in ballot. Because if this mail is slowed down as much as it has, and have you noticed your mail slow down? I mean, as I said earlier, I have. So we are going to have to, when I say, do you have a voting plan? This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Do you have a voting plan? The mail's slow. Okay. You asked for a mail-in ballot, but you haven't got it yet. You asked for it a month ago. It was supposed to be sent out to you. You haven't received it yet. Now what do you do? See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about anything else. What is the strategy? What is your voting strategy, procedurally, when it comes to these things like the mail being slowed down? This guy is going to do anything, and you get the idea of that. I don't have to keep repeating it. He is doing everything to stay in power. He would just as rather none of us votes. The Republican Party has often been like this, has pretty much always been like this, certainly since the beginning of 1980s, when Paul Weyrich said that it is to our advantage that people don't vote. Said that's the guy who's a conservative, libertarian, at his Libertarian Forum, I think it was, in 1980, Paul Weyrich, Republican. We don't want you to vote. He admitted it. There's audio of that on YouTube. Donald Trump is the same. He doesn't want you to vote. He said it as much earlier this year. Oh my goodness, the Democrats had things in that proposal that they were doing, in that bill. Oh my God, if that had passed, man, you'd never have a Republican in the White House for president ever again. You'd never have a Republican president ever again. He said that earlier this year on his buddy's network there, Fox Network. Fox News. He said that. And there's audio of it. I've seen it. I've got audio of it. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll play it for you in a few minutes. These guys, these guys want to make sure you don't vote, and they want to delay your vote, and they want to curtail and confuse you. So please, right now is the time. You've got to make a decision. Are you going to vote in person? And I think you should do it with early voting, the best bet for you. And hopefully you live in a state where there is early voting. There's early voting in a number of states, but not in every state. In-person early voting. You know why I recommend that more than anything? Number one, you know that you're casting your vote. Number two, there's going to be less people around when you vote early. And number three, you have made direct contact with the electorate, rather with the Board of Elections. They've certified you, and you've certified yourself by signing the book, or however it's done in your state. In California, you sign a book, and then you go and vote. They see you, you see them, you signed your name, and you've got your receipt that you voted. That's what happens here in California. And early voting is the best way, even in a pandemic. Why? Again, I'll repeat it. Because there are going to be less people around. The earlier you vote, the better. Now, maybe this year might be different. Maybe not. Now that I've said this, maybe there's a lot of people who are listening who will say, yeah, you know what, I should do that. But you really should. I mean, honestly, go and vote. And what I would also say, if you're someone who is worried about being out in crowds for a prolonged period of time, here's what I would suggest for you to do. And this is part of why I'm going through state by state on all of this for the next few days and weeks. Make sure you look up what the issues are on your state's election ballot for November 3rd. And typically the states release this information about a month or so before the election. Finalize it by mailing it to you or putting it online. And I've already seen some of these states' ballot initiatives online. You need to go to your state Secretary of State or the Board of Elections, and you can look at some of these sample or at least rough draft outlines of what is going to be on your ballot. And make sure you, when you get your booklet or when you go online in late September, or even now, because I would do this as early as possible. I do this right now. Make sure that you look at your ballot, see what it's going to look like, and start filling out the information. Do this all at home. So whatever candidates are running, whether it's in the judgeships, local judges, the sheriff, and in some of these states you have these sheriffs are elected positions, or some of the prosecutors may be elected positions. Whatever it is locally in your state, and of course, including the White House, including the Senate, including the House, the governor, all the way down ballot to dog catcher. Have all of your choices for who you're voting for, have that all filled out already in terms of being filled out either on a sample ballot or filled out or written down on a piece of paper. Have that all written down already. Who you're voting for. Have it all written down somewhere, and then bring that with you to the voting booth. And then just fill out, just transfer what you've written in your piece of paper to the voting machine. Or if you're going to do a paper ballot, California, most of it is overwhelmingly paper ballots. I think all of it is. Just transfer the information that you wrote down at home to your voting machine that you're voting on, to the voting machine you're voting on, to the paper that you're voting on in the voting booth. And it will take you half the time. Believe me, you will be in and out of there within half an hour or less. You will not be in there for more than half an hour. Now, of course, every state has different things on their ballot. Some have more things on their ballots than others do. But the point is, no matter what, you have already prepared ahead. You're already ahead of the game. If you prepare this, if you spend an hour at home with what the issues are going to be on your state's ballot for November. And you've already seen them by going to the website that you live in terms of the Secretary of State. And you've seen, okay, here's what is going to be on the November 3rd ballot in your state. You need to go and start right now outlining who you're going to vote for in each of those races from top to bottom. Write that down, bring that piece of paper with you when you're early voting, and go ahead and boom, go ahead and transfer it. That's if you're worried about the mail process, because this mail process is very tricky now with what Trump's doing. It's very dangerous. And that is the best way. Early voting is the best way to get around the problems that we are seeing now with the mail slowing down drastically in this country. So that is my key advice to you, among other pieces of key advice, is to look on your Secretary of State's website, see if there is a ballot for November 3rd already available with all the races that you can expect that will be on there. Now, some might not be on there, but I would urge you and I would recommend you to check, because pretty much all of them will be. They will all be there. And if there isn't, you just fill it out. No big deal. But this is about having a strategy to vote. So I recommend to you to do that. Really adopt that. Most people do not do that. Most people will go cold into a voting booth, whether it's early voting or November 3rd, and they will sit there with their eyes wide open, or stand there with their eyes wide open, and just start randomly, or they'll start putting in people that they want to vote for. And this is bigger than that. Like, I'm not trying to belittle anybody here. I'm simply saying that you've got to have yourself really focused here, because this election is no joke this coming November. And the more prepared you are, the better. Do your early voting now. You know why? Whenever early voting starts, typically it starts in October. Typically, roughly about a month before the election. So say October 3rd, October 4th, whenever. Typically, it's about a month before. Some states may only do it 2 weeks before. I don't know. But you have got to find out if your state is an early voting state. I've already talked about one early voting state in this country so far, as I have done through these first couple of days of doing this with every state. One of the early voting states is Alaska. So Alaska, you are an early voting state. Those of you in Alaska, this is another reason why you need to do this now. Because when your state starts to vote early in October, you can absolutely get a head start by having all this information ready. You just transfer it and you're done. And you know what? It beats the crowds. It beats the stormtroopers. You're not going to have federal troops in Alaska. And while these thugs may be coming to black and brown cities, and they almost certainly will be for November, if you think that this thing in Portland or in Seattle or Chicago or Detroit is just, it's just something that we're just doing, they're going to stay there for the next 3 or 4 months. So what's your strategy? The strategy has to be, make sure that you vote early. Really, avoid the crowds, avoid the lines, avoid any kind of intimidation that is sure to come in black and brown cities, and is sure to come with people who vote Democratic in general. This is a massive voter suppression, vote stealing effort that's going on by Trump and the Republicans. And another way that the reason why I would also recommend that you vote early in person instead, is that you're going to have situations all over this country where people are going to go to the polls on November 3rd if they do it in person, and the precincts will be closed. The polling stations in a lot of these black cities, in a lot of these brown cities, in a lot of these heavily Democratic cities under Republican control will be closed. They will be closed. We've seen this already, folks. February of this year in South Carolina in the Democratic primary, over 100 precincts were closed. And Democratic voters in South Carolina did not realize this until they got to the voting booth, the polling station. Oh, I'm sorry, your polling station, this polling station's closed. Well, what? Yeah, I'm sorry, miss, this polling station is closed. Well, why didn't anybody tell me? Well, I'm sorry, it's closed. Well, where can I vote? 2 miles away, over here, over there, in that city there. Here's the address. Then you go to that one and you go, well, wait a minute. Am I sure? Is this really the place to vote? Is my vote gonna... I mean, this is what is happening. And Republican states are doing this. They've been doing it in Texas. They've been doing it in Kentucky. You've seen that. They're doing it in Georgia, another Republican-controlled state. You saw those long lines in Atlanta, didn't you? I mean, this happened all within the last few months here in 2020. This, therefore, is another reason to vote early. Go in with your ballot filled out, basically, on a piece of paper. Transfer that to your choices. When you're actually voting, just copy what you've done. Just transfer it. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. You can have a piece of paper with your voting choices on it. There's no law against that. So, look, vote early voting. That's what you've got to do. Because this mail thing, yes, people are still going to send in for their ballot, but there have been so many reports of people not receiving their ballots. And ask your state if they've not mailed out your ballot and you're still very skittish, and I can understand it, you're still very skittish about going out to vote in person with this pandemic that's raging in California, in Florida, and Texas, the three of the four biggest states in the country. If you're still worried, and understandably so about that, then ask your Secretary of State, when will these ballots be mailed out? Can I have my ballot right now? I want it now. So that you have enough time to receive it and send it back in. But my ultimate recommendation is to vote early. If your state has early voting, and I know not every state does, California has early voting. I'll get to that in a few moments. You really have to do early voting because, again, it eliminates all these issues. It eliminates the possibility of you standing in lines for 10 hours. It eliminates the possibility of federal thugs intimidating and standing around and yanking you out of a voting line for nothing. It eliminates the possibility of you getting coronavirus. It reduces it because there's going to be less people around anyway, and you're going to be wearing a mask because you will not be allowed in to City Hall or to wherever it might be that the early voting area is. You won't be allowed to come in without a mask on anyway. So there's that. And if you do early voting, and if you do it with, again, your choices already written out because you've looked at the website that has the ballot on it, so you know exactly what you're going to see on that voting ballot when you go into the booth, have your choices already written out so you reduce the time that you are out in public. And also, there's going to be social distancing at these early voting sites anyway. Certainly here in California, there will be. And I would expect and would hope, in quotes, that that would be the case in every state. Although we know that if in Wisconsin they had long lines in April, another Republican-controlled state, then you know that they're probably going to have them again in November. They're putting this in your face, folks. Trump and his criminals are putting this all out in plain view of you. And some people think, oh, that's bold. Ooh. No, it's not. It's dangerous. And instead of talking about how performative things are, we need to talk about how active we must be. John Lewis was celebrated again yesterday. He's lying in state as I speak here on July the 28th, 2020, in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. Then he will be presented in various parts of Atlanta. I think it's going to be in Atlanta. His body will lie in state there as well. And then he'll be buried I believe in Georgia or Alabama on Thursday of this week. But look, I want to make this very, very clear to everybody. To everybody. We have to act now. John Lewis departed from this earth just over 11 or 12 days ago. We have to act now. And we've got to act in his name. And it really behooves you to do this. It's been 11 or 12 days or whatever it's been since he's passed. And we need to cut through all the garbage and the noise that you're hearing and get to the mission of being focused on voting this November, being focused on a strategy and a game plan. I've talked about this forever now. What is your plan right now to vote? Are you spreading the word to people? Are you giving them the information? Are you telling them what they need to do? Are you offering a ride to the polls? If you're someone, and there are still many people like this, who likes the feel of going out on election day and casting that vote in person on November 3rd, then what's your game plan around that? What if you have to wait in line? And this applies to Black and Latino voters, Latinx voters. This applies to Asian voters. This applies to Native American voters. What's your game plan? So I hope that what I'm saying is of some kind of benefit to you. Because the reason why I push early voting is because I think early voting is, quite frankly, in my estimation, the safest and most reliable way to cast your vote. You be done with it. October comes, you go in, you're done with it. There's going to be very few people around, I guarantee you, in pretty much most of these states. Very few people. If you fill out your choices in advance and then transfer them when you're in the booth voting, it will go by even faster for you. You won't have to worry about any kind of intimidation. You won't have to worry about any kind of virus. You will lower your risk of transmission of this virus. You will lower your risk of getting this virus because you're going to have a mask on anyway. And there will be physical distancing at these voting booths in your state. I'm almost positive about that. I'm almost 100% positive. And if there isn't social or physical distancing at the polling station, make sure that you distance yourself from somebody. I mean, as simple as that. The early voting is a huge deal, and it will be very helpful. I'm telling you. It also eliminates the risk of not getting your mail-in ballot in time. You've got to do this early voting thing, folks. And again, I know that every single state in the country doesn't have it, but I think it's the best thing to have. Because with the mail being slowed down as it is, and if you don't know when, or rather if your state doesn't know exactly when it's going to mail out these ballots, shame on them, first of all. They should know. These things should be mailed out now. They really should. And I know they're not because there's still primaries going on. But if this mail thing and this slowdown continues, and you're hearing this on the Chris Hayes program, 2 weeks for a piece of mail within the United States, 2 weeks. I mean, this is designed to stop you from voting by mail. Trump's been talking about this all year. Oh, vote by mail. And he votes by mail. Bill Barr votes by mail. All of his administration votes by mail. Kayleigh McEnany, the press secretary of the White House, she votes by mail. Kushner, Trump Jr., Ivanka, Trump, all of them, they vote by mail. And Donald Trump, all he does is go out there publicly and lie and say, oh, it's rigged. Then why the hell are you doing it? Why would people be screaming? Why would these Republicans, why would Donald Trump be screaming 3 months, 6 months, 10 months, a year ahead of the election about how rigged it is if he himself wasn't planning to rig it? Donald Trump is a projection puppet master. And everybody knows, including you, that when he talks, he's projecting. And when he goes around telling you, oh, the election's rigged, it's this, these results can't be accepted, and you can't trust mail-in voting, he's telling you that he is going to be the reason that you can't trust mail-in voting. That's what he's saying to you. He speaks in code. When he wished Ghislaine Maxwell wish her well, when he did that a week or two ago, he was saying, now you don't give me up. You don't give me up. You don't say anything about me. You don't say what you know about me and Epstein and these girls that I violated. That's what I think. I think he totally is involved in all that. He was friends with Epstein forever. He knows Ghislaine Maxwell. There's a billion pictures of them together. Billion pictures of Trump and Epstein and Maxwell together. All of them. Trump and Epstein. I mean, they're all together. There's video of it. This guy's a sleazebag. All these people are criminals. So Donald Trump is the one who's rigging the election by slowing down the mail, by having these federal thugs stealing people off the streets like it's Nazi Germany and it's like the Gulag at the Gestapo. Stealing people off the streets. This is disgusting. Donald Trump's the one that's rigging this election. This is the guy that is lying to you and saying to you that we can't have mail-in voting because he's voting by mail-in vote. But it's not good enough for you. This is the guy that allowed and is still allowing 150,000 plus people to die. And it's probably double that number now in this country, here in the US. And he's doing it so that, in my view, so that he can stay in power. Because what's 150,000 people to me? What's 300,000 people to me? Heck, that's 300,000 people who can't vote in an election. Yeah, no one's going to say it because it sounds really crude and evil. But think about this. When you've got a guy who did nothing and continues to do nothing as the United States enemy, Russia, and Vladimir Putin pays money to Afghan and Taliban rebels, to kill U.S. military personnel, and this guy, Donald Trump, does nothing? As the so-called commander-in-chief, if he will turn his back as Afghan rebels or anyone else kills American military personnel, and Vladimir Putin pays them off, and Donald Trump doesn't do anything about that, what do you think he's going to do here with 150,000 people? You don't think that part of his plan is, well, if I just let these people die, it will help me get to re-election? You don't think that that's part of what's going on in his mind? Go and read the book that Mary Trump has written about him. Too much and never enough. That is exactly who Donald Trump is. Someone who is a pathological liar, someone who is sociologically defunct. This guy is an absolute sociopath and a psychopath. That is psychopathic. And I'm telling you, he doesn't give a rat's about those 150,000 people. Has he ever said that he is really sorry about these people dying? No, I've never heard that. Maybe you have. I haven't. He doesn't care about human life. He cares about his own life. And staying in office so that he doesn't go to jail. That's the simple truth. Early voting is the key, folks. Early voting. If you don't have early voting in your state, then right now is the time to call your Secretary of State, go online, get an absentee ballot. But I would call them. Call up the Secretary of State in your state or the Board of Elections in your town and ask for a ballot. Ask for it now. Say that you want it now. Can I pick it up? Ask them. Can I go and pick up a ballot? I know it's still July and it may be a little early, but you've got to start getting active here. This is the active that you can be and do. So please, take this very seriously. And do not be, again, seduced by polls, by the pundits, by people telling you, well, he may not leave. First of all, we've got to make sure that we are in a position where he has to. And the only way that happens is if we vote. And quite frankly, the only way that happens is if we vote in droves. And the only way that happens is if we are all informed and educated. And we all do this early. Because early voting usually favors one party over another. That isn't always true. But Democrats usually, if it's a huge early vote, it's usually Democratic. Not always, but usually. That speaks to enthusiasm. We've got to get young people to vote. And I think they're going to. But we can't take any of this for granted. All the activists who are out on the streets, and they're doing an excellent job, they've also got to vote. And I hope that at some of these activities, these activist rallies and marches, that there are messages about voting and registration. Because that's really important as well. Look at the hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people we've seen over the last 2 months protesting. And it continues. And I've always said these protests have never ended. The media just turned off the camera. But just because they turn off the camera doesn't mean that the protests are over. And that's how we mentally think. We think that because we don't see it on our TV screen, that somehow it's not playing out in reality. I mean, that's how we think. We are a TV nation. Let's act. Let's vote. Let's get prepared. And now is the time to have a plan. When I come back, 4 states, and the information you need in those states if you're voting and you are one of those residents of one of those states, the information you need that's going to help you. And it's going to be in order here. Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado. Next. All voters in Arizona, or any voter who is absentee in Arizona, who won't be in the state, you need to be listening to this right now. To go to the website to check your voter registration, which I highly recommend, you should go to arizona.vote. That's arizona.vote. Arizona.vote provides you, I think, a very good and fairly straightforward look at the landscape and how you can register to vote. You get to that page, you will note, at least if you do this today on the 27th of July of 2020, you will note a message that says early voting for the primary election has started. And there's some deadlines there, one of which has passed, so you really cannot request a ballot by mail anymore because the deadline passed on July 24th. But as you scroll down beyond that, you will see a header that says Arizona election information. And there's some directives there. And then you will see these 4 rectangular boxes. And the one on the far right-hand side that is red, you will want to click on that. It says register to vote. So you would click on that and then follow the prompts. Now there's the 2 languages, English and Spanish. You hit continue. And then what you will see is the second page. It will say voter registration on it, but underneath the voter registration, and this is after you check which language that you want, it will give you the upcoming election dates. Now, I don't know why Arizona did not put that on their front page of their website. I have no idea. Again, I don't want to impugn the motives, but look, we know about these states. Many of them are in Republican hands. At least 33 of them are, if not more. And so in terms of the Republican governorship and the legislatures, there's at least 27 of those legislatures too. So that's just some of the things you should know as backdrop. But on this next page, when you get to that page after you have selected which language you want, you will see a new page and it says upcoming election dates and voter registration deadline. Now, there is a primary in Arizona coming up on August the 4th. That's just over a week away now. And the voter registration deadline for that has obviously passed, and it was July 6th. But if you want to vote in November, in the November 3rd general election for the presidency and all the other races, and I think you should go and vote in every single race. There shouldn't be anything left unturned, no stones at all. If you want to vote in November, please remember that you have to register to vote no later than October 5th. And I actually would require, and I would strongly recommend, that you register to vote online immediately. Immediately. Do not wait till October. I know we can be creatures of habit and people do wait, and do wait usually till the last minute. But I urge you not to do that, because you know what happens. You are on October the 5th. It's 10:30 at night. Oh, I've got an hour and a half. No worries. And then you find the website crashes. Then you find your internet doesn't work for some reason. There's been an internet outage, depending on the internet provider you have. Or if you have a cable company that supplies internet, they have a shutdown. They have a situation where the network has crashed or has been brought down for some reason. And then what? Then what do you do? So you've got to do this right now. Do not leave this to the last minute. Do not leave it to chance, because it's usually what happens. You know, when you do leave something to chance, you usually have something like some kind of internet outage or a website that you need to go to that is completely slammed and inoperable because everybody is trying to register at the same time. So I would really recommend for you to immediately, right now in July, when the traffic to that website is not very vigorous, to register to vote now online. And you can do that. You can check on the status of your voter registration on this page that I'm talking about. You will see the bullet points. One of them says to check the status of your registration, click here. Your voter registration, click here. So you click on that, and then it will give you a search by voter. You can enter, you obviously select the county in Arizona that you are in. The top of the page says Arizona Voter Information Portal, Portal. Arizona Voter Information Portal. There's a lovely picture of, I don't know which part of the national park that is. It's a lovely shot there of some red brick. It's just lovely. And you'll see it says search by voter, and select the county, put your last name in, date of birth, what kind of ID type, identification method that is, and you click on the arrows, and there's a driver's license or voter ID, which is something in Arizona. Voter ID is something that you need to present, or your driver's license, and then an identification number, and then you search that way to see if you are registered to vote in Arizona, checking on the status of your registration. And you can also find your polling place. It's a relatively straightforward website, Arizona's. My only thing is that I wish that they had put the information about the voter registration deadline on the front page of the site. And the deadline to register for November. So critical. In October in Arizona, you've got until October the 5th of this year to register for the presidential election on November 3rd. I want to repeat this. You really should register to vote now. Do not wait. If you haven't registered to vote for the August 4th primary, you are out of luck. You cannot vote in Arizona. If you've got questions about that, you should contact the Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, in Arizona, or you can certainly look on the website there. There are some FAQs, there are some pages that you can go to, and I believe there's a direct phone number as well. But anyway, that is what you should be doing. If you're an Arizona voter and you want to vote this November 3rd, I guarantee you should register right now. Do not wait. Do not wait. One thing to note about Arizona, there is a race of significance there. It's for the U.S. Senate. Now, there's some local races that I am sure are very important. Please do not neglect your local races. It's very important to emphasize that because it is easy to do. Arizona and every other state in the country has very important local races going on, and you should always vote in them, right down to dog catcher. Do not leave any stone unturned. I hear some people in some states going, and again, these might be bots on Twitter saying this, I'm not going to vote for anything else. I'm just going to vote for president. Or the other way around, I'm not going to vote for president. I'm just going to vote for everything else. Or I'm only going to go vote for this, and this race, but I'm not going to vote for that, and the other race. And I just think that's all a bunch of nonsense. That's probably Putin's bots trying to throw you off and cause chaos and confusion. Would it shock anybody? And any other group of countries that are involved. I know China is a country that's been named, Saudi Arabia, Iran. These are all places that have had some influence, according to the FBI and others, I believe. So, don't get distracted. I've told you about that yesterday with Mr. West. I'm not going to go back into that again. You can listen to what I had to say about him in yesterday's episode. I hope that once and for all, people will move past him and do what they must do to make sure that we do not have 4 more years of this particular person in the White House. I think America now, I hope, in quotes, but sincerely hope, that America has learned its lesson and Americans have learned theirs. And white Americans, 53% of whom voted for this guy, if you're female, and if you're male, 64 or 65% of you voted for him. I hope now that you have learned your lesson, because the country, I think, many of us in this country have. And the lesson we know is that we don't want any more of him in here. We don't want any part of him. So these states that I'm running down are critical, because the difference between you casting a vote on November 3rd and you not casting one at all, whether it's early voting or whether it's on the day voting or absentee voting, is huge. And this information is designed for you to vote. Now, look, you may agree or disagree with the choices that are on offer for the presidency or for any other race, but you should participate. And write-in is not a good thing to do, because write-ins only guarantee that one of the candidates, and in this case it would be the incumbent, Donald Trump, gets to keep his job. And any kind of write-in is a vote for the incumbent. That almost always is the case. So you don't want to do that if you are interested in voting in Arizona or anywhere else. You've got to know what the ground rules are. So apart from the presidency, the other race in Arizona, and as I said, there's lots of local races there that are important, but the one race that I highlight is the Senate, the U.S. Senate. And for people who don't know, the U.S. Senate can become a democratically controlled Senate if literally just 4 U.S. senators are gained by the Democrats. Now, it's technically 3, because the 4th person would be, provided that the president is elected in as a Democrat and not this monstrosity that we've got here now. You really only need 3 Democratic net gains. 3 seats gained by the Democrats on November 3rd would ensure, provided that Joe Biden is elected, would ensure a Democratic Senate. Why? Because Joe Biden, in his capacity as president of the Senate, or at least not he, but his vice presidential pick in her capacity as president of the Senate, would be able to be the tie-breaking vote. Now, with Donald Trump, I think Mike Pence has cast at least 7 tiebreaker votes already in the Senate, including during a Supreme Court nomination. It might have been Brett Kavanaugh's. But in any event, he has 6 or 7 or even 8 times, perhaps, among the most ever, has cast tiebreakers, and he has been the tie-breaking 51st vote. So this is very important. But I would say, to be safe, 4 seats. If Democratic Party members are able to get 4 victories, a net gain of 4 seats, it will be a very good night, at least from the Senate side. And Mitch McConnell will no longer be in that job as the majority leader, and that would not be a moment too soon. The Senate race in Arizona is between Martha McSally, the incumbent Republican, and the Democratic candidate and challenger, Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly, of course, is one of 2 identical twins. He's also the man who famously stayed in space for a year by himself in outer space. He is also famously the husband of the former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, and you know what happened to Gabrielle Giffords. And Giffords has been a fervent activist for gun control and regulation and better gun sense laws and reducing gun violence and eradicating it, quite frankly. So there's the background there. Martha McSally, of course, lost her bid to replace, to defeat Kirsten Sinema in the Senate. But hey presto, within a month or so, she got the empty seat vacated by the late John McCain, and John McCain passing had allowed for Martha McSally to swoop in, and actually she was appointed to the seat, so she didn't really have to face an election. Now she has to face a second election. She faced the one against Sinema. She lost to her narrowly, and now for her trouble, she was installed in as the senator for that second seat, and now because she filled out the remainder of John McCain's time, and John Kyle was the caretaker senator during a few weeks or months after the passing of McCain, Martha McSally now has a big test ahead of her against the Democratic opponent who is polling way above her. And again, ignore polls. So that is where we are with Arizona. And when I come back, Arkansas. Welcome back. Arkansas now, and if you are an Arkansas voter, you will want to be listening right now. To check your voter registration, go to sossam.arkansas.gov. That's SOSARKANSAS.gov. When you go to that website, you will find on the homepage the seal of the state of the Arkansas Secretary of State, John Thurston, and a lovely rendering of the state capitol building in Arkansas. I guess it's in Little Rock. It's a beautiful building. It looks like it's been retouched in the photo, but nonetheless, it's a lovely golden-looking building. It's lovely, absolutely beautiful. And then as you scroll down slightly, you will see 4 boxes, one of which says elections, titled elections on it. It's the second one from the left, and when you go down underneath the title elections, you will see the word register to vote. It's the second category down. You click on register to vote, and you come to a voter registration application PDF, not an online application. I mean, it's online, but you can't just enter the information into the web page. You literally will have to print that application out. So if you have a printer, or if you have an air printer, or whatever you do, if you have access to those kinds of resources, do you see how this could also even be in this very simple way? Do you see how that could be voter suppression as well? Voter stealing before the fact? I mean, you haven't even sent in the application yet. And yet you could already, depending on who you are, depending on your finances, depending on your station, in Arkansas, you could already be at a distinct disadvantage. Even with 2 mouse clicks, that could happen to you. Because it seems the only way that Arkansas is accepting applications for voter registration, if you have not already registered to vote, is by doing it this way. Printing out the page, and as it instructs at the top, using black ink to complete the application. And it looks like a tax form. I mean, earlier this month, of course, the extended deadline came and went for your taxes filing for 2019. And I'm telling you, you must have had flashbacks if you've come to this Arkansas page, because my goodness me, it looks like a tax form. And then once you get past the 11 different questions, plus inputting your date of birth and your other personal information, you will see that there are some identification requirements in the bottom right-hand corner in section D on that first PDF page. And then in the second PDF page, you will see literally what is supposed to be an envelope addressed, already pre-addressed to the Arkansas Secretary of State. Attention, voter registration, and the P.O. box is there. Little Rock, Arkansas, and the zip code is there. And then top right-hand corner, or at least the bottom left, because it's upside down on that second page of the PDF, it says first class postage required. You will actually need to mail this off with a stamp. Who goes to the post office these days? Very few people do, especially now with coronavirus running rampant and wild all over the planet. I mean, why would you want to go to the post office? I hear you can buy stamps online and all of that. Yeah, maybe not. But the point is that look at what you have to do in Arkansas to register to vote. And I get it. Every state does have an application. I'm not trying to make it seem like Arkansas is this horrible state because you have to actually do an application. You can't just have anybody just write in stuff. But the fact that you've got to do this and you can't just put this information in online and voila, send it, shows you that that is already a discriminatory burden, because there are people who don't have stamps. There are people who may not have a post office near them. There are people who may not have a car. There are people who rely solely on public transportation. And if they do not have the wherewithal because the transportation is out of the way, the bus doesn't run exactly near where the post office is, and you've got to do all of this, and then you've got to go and stand in a line potentially in a post office to get stamps in order to stamp mail off this voter registration form. And if you've never registered before, you could be at a distinct, and you are at a distinct disadvantage. So that's something I would worry about Arkansas, and that's why it's important to do this now. It's important to learn this information now if you are an Arkansas voter and you are not registered to vote. So the deadline information, by the way, on that second page is also provided. It says to qualify to vote in the next election, you must apply to register to vote 30 days before the election. And if you mail this form, which is the form I've been talking to you about, it must be postmarked by that date. So right now, you for the November 3rd election in Arkansas, you will have to register around, I guess, October the 3rd or 4th. But don't wait until October. Register now. Fill out this application. If you've never registered to vote before in Arkansas, fill out the application and mail it in as quickly as you can. Get someone to help you if you are not in the position to mail it yourself. Have somebody who may have access to a car drive you over there with them, or someone you trust have them put it in for you. I, quite frankly, would not trust someone else to do this. I would actually make sure that someone could drive me if I was not in that, if I was in a similar position. I would make sure someone drove me to the post office, and I would personally mail it off myself. So that's the deadline information. Do not delay. And that's what they tell you. Do not delay. If you miss the deadline, you will not be able to register in time for that, to vote in that election. So make sure 30 days before. Now, they don't give you the exact date on this form. They just say 30 days before the election. And in my count, that is October the 3rd or 4th. But like I say, do not wait till October. You want to do this now. And it has this particular direction that you've got to do. If you want to mail this, it says fold the form on the middle perforation, remove the plastic strip, seal at bottom, stamp, and mail. That's the specific instructions. And then if you've got any questions, you want to call your local county clerk, or, and then this is who I would call, the Arkansas Secretary of State, John Thurston. I would call him. The Election Division Voter Services phone number, I guess, maybe they're all the same phone number, but certainly the Elections Division Voter Services at 1-800-482-1127. I recommend you do this now. And it says contact your county clerk if you have not received confirmation of this application within 2 weeks. Now, confirmation could be that confirmation they've received it or confirmation that you're registered. And make sure that you follow up and ask them, am I registered? In fact, you should be able to do that and find out. You really should. But that is a window on what you can expect if you are an Arkansas voter. And you can look around that website. And you can look up your voter registration, actually, and I'll tell you how you do that as well. If you're someone who is already someone who's applied to vote and you've applied to register, and you want to find exactly where you have to go on the Arkansas website to register, to check your registration, and I would check it once a week through the end of October. Again, you want to go to sos.arkansas.gov. You want to go to where it says elections on that homepage. You scroll down a little bit. The second box from the left says elections on it. And what you want to do there is, and this is really important, you want to click on voter view, which is the third category down. You click on voter view. You can see it says registration information, confirm your address, party association, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. When you do this, what you need to do is just type in your first name, your last name, and your date of birth, and then click look up. And that will give you whether you are registered or not. I mean, it's that simple. So that is how you do it in Arkansas. Welcome back. California. So for California voters, you need to go to sos.ca.gov/elections. sos.ca.gov/elections. There you will see Alex Padilla, the California Secretary of State, with the seal of the state of California on the left-hand side of the top of the page, and you will then see elections and voter information. You will scroll down and you will see a number of boxes, the general election box, and you'll see voter information guide, public display. These are things that you can refer to, but the most important thing you want to do is check your registration. So here's what you do. Voter status and register to vote. You'll see two of them. If you've not registered yet to vote in California, then you click on register to vote. Let's start with that first. The deadline to register to vote in California is October the 19th. Do not wait until then, please. You want to register to vote now, please. All the information about how to register to vote is on that page, and there is an area near the top of the page that says, underneath voter registration, that says register to vote now. You click on that, and then you are brought to the online voter registration page in California. So that's how you do that in California. Remember, the deadline in California is October the 19th, 2020. You can register to vote online. Arkansas is a state where you can't do that, and I've just finished talking about Arkansas and how Arkansas doesn't allow online voter registration, at least based on what I have researched. But in California, you can register to vote online, and in the overwhelming majority of states, you can do so. So that is, in a nutshell, California, how you check your voter registration at that website that I've just talked about, sos.ca.gov/elections. Also on that page that I have just given out the web address to, you can see voter status. You click on that, and you can check your voter registration there. So wherever you see, when you see voter status on that same page at sos.ca.gov/elections, you click on voter status. That is checking your registration. If you want to check it, check your registration once a week, every week through the end of October. And then there's other information on that page that talks about the general election in November, talks about voter information guide, public displays. Now, in this instance, the public display, this is what the voter guide is going to look like that you are going to receive if you are a California resident. There are propositions on there. This is what I'm talking about, checking the ballot in advance to see what you're going to be seeing on there. You're going to have to do some homework if you are so inclined. If you are someone who likes to vote in person and still are skittish though, as I said earlier, you will want to make sure that you get your voting together in terms of what you're going to do, what your plan is, in terms of what the ballot initiatives look like. You've got to know that information. Do your homework before you go into that booth. And you can reduce the time. If you take a position on every one of the issues on your ballot, mark them down on a piece of paper, bring that piece of paper with you into the ballot box, into the voting booth, and then just transcribe your choice into the actual voting machine or into the voting card that you vote on, whatever it is. It cuts down the time dramatically. It really does. Rather than go into a voting booth cold and try to figure all this out on November 3rd or another, no, you've got to come with a plan. So there we have it. That's California. Again, the deadline to register to vote in California, October the 19th. And there's lots of information, really helpful information on this page at sos.ca.gov/elections. Lots of good information there. How to vote, resources, everything. It's all there on that page. That's it. All you need to do is go to that page. And that's California in a nutshell. In this election, there's going to be local races that will be of import. There will be Speaker Pelosi here in San Francisco. She's running against Shahid Buttar. I've mentioned that earlier. Speaker of the House Pelosi. And there will be other local races that will be important to you in California, in your local area, in your city. But generally speaking, there's no governor's race in California this year. There's no Senate races that I know of this year. Dianne Feinstein had an election, I think, the year before last. Kamala Harris is not running until, I think, 2022 or 23. And who knows, she may not need to run because there's a good chance that she could be picked by Joe Biden. In a matter of days now, Joe Biden is going to make this choice and announce it. So, announce his choice, I should say. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think it's probably going to be either Kamala Harris or Susan Rice. I have been thinking Susan Rice, and I hope it is Susan Rice, quite frankly. I even did an episode on this a few weeks back, why it must be Susan Rice and why I think it will be. But again, we'll see. I think Susan Rice is going to be the pick. And I think it would be an excellent choice. I think Ambassador, I've told you this before here, I think Ambassador Susan Rice would be excellent as VP. I can see it clearly now. And I hope Joe Biden and his team can. She's the right choice, I'm telling you. So, but it could be Harris. A lot of people like Harris. Harris here in California has mixed reviews. I should say specifically in San Francisco, she has mixed reviews at best. I think I'm being a little too kind. She was here as San Francisco District Attorney. I've gone through in the past about her record with here in San Francisco ad infinitum that has been problematic at best, and also her record as the California Attorney General as well has been dubious as well in some areas, particularly when it comes to the foreclosure king of California, Steve Mnuchin. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because he's now the U.S. Treasury Secretary in the Trump administration. So there's California. That is pretty much it. California is fairly straightforward in terms of the information you need. If you have any questions about mail-in ballots or anything like that, make sure you contact the California Secretary of State or your local county board of elections. And you can do that online as well. And make sure you go to their websites. Make sure you get a phone number. Make sure you look for where it says contact us or contact and find a phone number or look one up. Search one. I would do it, first of all, by their web pages, by the official web pages, not just randomly. So that's California. I'll be back in a moment with Colorado. Welcome back. Colorado, the fourth state of the ones that I'm doing on this episode. You heard, first of all, Arizona, you heard Arkansas, you heard California, and now the fourth of the four on this day, Colorado. And my goodness me, Colorado is, well, their website is not the friendliest. It is not the friendliest website. That I can warn you about right now. So I'm going to make this as clear as I can make it, and it's very important that people in Colorado pay attention to this, because their website is not the most aesthetically pleasing website to look at. It, quite frankly, looks amateurish, and maybe some may even say that about this podcast. I don't know. But that's all right. Colorado's website, though, I'm sorry. Much more important, believe me. Secretary of State Jenna Griswold. I would actually, I probably will tweet her, and it's not her fault. I'm sure it's the web designers. The web designers are the ones to blame, not Secretary Griswold. The website designers. I'm sorry. This is this is really amateurish, mate. You can't have that. I mean, I hope the vote is not the way. If the vote is designed, if the vote infrastructure in Colorado is the way that the web page and the website is designed, Coloradans, y'all are in some trouble. I mean, this web page is really, I have to tell you. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get to this, shall we? What you need to do is do this, and there's going to be several steps, so let's just have at it, shall we? You need to go to the following web address: For Colorado voters, pay attention to this, please. SOS, Sam Oscar Sam, sos.state.co.us. sos.state.co.us. You will see the home page there, and you see exactly what I mean. Now, there is a note that says the Secretary of State's office has suspended all in-person services until further notice. They also give, and it's in a pink banner that's across the top of the page, and it also gives you a phone number there as well. Most of our services remain available online, it says, as well, among other things it says. And it says that for a filing that must occur on paper, please send it via the U.S. Postal Service only. Other forms of mail may not be received in a timely manner. Well, given what I've told you on this episode about Trump slowing down the U.S. mail, I mean, here we go. I mean, come on, folks. It's right in front of us. And there's a phone number that is out there, 303-894-2200. Call that number with any questions, they say. But look, this is what you need to do. Once you get to that page, by going to sos.state.co.us, you need to do the following. You will see a banner underneath the smiling face of Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold. There's a thin purple banner that goes underneath the header page there, where she is smiling at you. And along that purple banner are 7 things, 7 categories. One of them you will see is elections. It is third from the right-hand side, elections. You click on elections, and then you are brought to the elections and voting page. Now, there's information on there that is there for you. You'll see it. What you need to do is scroll down on the left-hand side of the page. As you scroll down, under the heading Categories and Areas of Interest, what you need to do on that left-hand side is go to where it says Election Information. You click on Election Information, and this is where you have to be. This is it. And why did I do it this way? Well, if I had given you the web address for that election information page, it would have been confusing, and it would have just been too much. So the process for you in Colorado, sos.state.co.us, go to the purple banner at the top of that page where it says elections. There are, as I said, several categories. You want to go to where it says elections. You click on that. You see the elections and voting page. You scroll down. On your left-hand side, you will see categories and areas of interest in bold black lettering. Underneath that, you will see election information. That's where you want to go to. You click on election information. You are brought to the election information page. And then you will see voters. On that left-hand side, underneath election information, in bold lettering, you'll see the word voters. Underneath that, you will see register to vote, and you will see find my registration. It's pretty self-explanatory. You click on register to vote, and you do just that, and it will show you what to do. It's very straightforward there. If you want to check your registration, and as I said, you should do it once a week, every week through October 2020, then you click on Find My Registration. You click on that, and then you enter your information as you are prompted. That is Colorado in a nutshell, folks. If you are a Colorado voter, or if you know someone in Colorado, please spread the word. Remind them about this and do it now. Do not wait. I spoke earlier about ballot questions and preparing yourself to vote before you even get to the booth. If you are voting early or if you're voting during November 3rd or whatever you're doing, because this mail thing, send in your ballot, but you've got to keep pressing these people and make sure that you get your ballot now. Demand your ballot now, believe me, as early as you can. But as I say, I think early voting is the best thing. Colorado has early voting. California has early voting. So most states in the country do. Many do not. Or I should say some do not. California does have early voting. I don't think I mentioned that when I did my California segment, but it does have early voting, and I think it's around October the 3rd or 4th, somewhere around there for California. For Colorado, early voting is October the 19th. October the 19th is early voting. That's when early voting in Colorado begins for the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election, general election. And when I talk about the ballots and having awareness of what the ballot's going to look like beforehand, so that you're not just coming into that booth for the first time and seeing all this stuff in front of you, Colorado, as I've said, as do many states, they put what is on their ballot online ahead of time. And it may be tweaked or whatever, but the point is you are coming in with a working knowledge of what's going on. You click on the same page where I told you that the election information is and where the voting information is, where you're registering to vote and finding your registration. There's a section also there that's called 2020 General Election. And you go to the bottom of that page underneath 2020 General Election, and you will see something that says 2020 Statewide Ballot Questions. This is for Colorado. Then up comes amendments and propositions on the 2020 ballot. And what you will see are the things that are going to be on the ballot. I mean, literally, they're right there in front of you. For example, I'm reading this off Senate Bill SB 19-042 about the national popular vote. And this is literally going to be on I'm reading this. It's going to be on the Colorado ballot in November, on November 3rd, and the election. Shall the following act of the General Assembly, this is the Colorado State Legislature, the Colorado State Legislature, an act concerning adoption of an agreement among the states to elect the President of the United States by national popular vote. So there's a national popular vote initiative that is in Colorado, and this Senate bill that I just read, that's going to be on the ballot in November. So make a decision now as to whether you're going to vote yes or no on that. Then you've got House bills, there's cigarette and tobacco and nicotine products tax, and it's all there. There's a whole lot of the restoration of gray wolves, Initiative 107. This Initiative 120, prohibition on late-term abortions. Right now, if you are a Colorado voter, you want to be looking at this stuff. Now, these things are going to be on the November 3rd ballot. So that is for those of you in Colorado with a plan and who want to have an idea of what is going to be, these are statewide ballot questions, you will want to look at that now. I think you will, especially if you want to vote early. So you have this all planned, what you're going to do there. And of course, there may be additional things that are added, but the point is, it's better to be prepared and have a jump on this stuff. So mentally, you are already focused and prepared on this, so that it's not going to be that much of a surprise at all once you get to the voting booth, if you choose to vote in person or if you choose to vote by mail. So that's Colorado. Again, their early vote is, the start of their early voting is October the 19th. That is the start of their early voting. There's also issues there. You will see on that same page about election information, you will see acceptable ID. There's a whole list of things that are acceptable. And then there's, I think, 2 at the bottom of the page that are not acceptable. But you'll see all of that. Once you get past the amateurish looking website, it's rather straightforward. It really is. And I'm going to just run it by you again really quickly. This is what you do if you're a Colorado voter. You type in sos.state.co.us, and then what you do after that is go to where it says elections. Elections is the category that will be in the purple banner that runs underneath the header of the page. You click on elections, you'll see where it says elections and voting, and then you scroll down, and on the left-hand side, you will see a category that says categories and areas of interest. Underneath that heading, you'll go to election information. Click on election information, and then you will see where it says voters in bold black lettering, and the categories registered to vote, find my registration. Those are the places you need to go to. And if you want to find out what's on the statewide ballot questions for Colorado, you will see underneath the voter category, the 2020 general election category, and then you will see 2020 statewide ballot questions. You click on that. So really, that is what you do for Colorado. Early voting there is October the 19th. And that's pretty much it. Now, of course, there's other general information there. Resources, blah, blah, blah. Voter registration drives. I mean, there are some helpful things there. I mean, they really are. I mean, it's just that the design of the website is not great. And that's my only pickle, if you will, about Colorado. But generally speaking, all of this on Colorado's is really straightforward stuff. Hey, I don't think you can complain too much there. The only thing that I will say about Colorado is that there isn't necessarily an area. Okay, now let me see here. Good grief. There isn't necessarily a place where it directly says what the voter registration deadline is. I would ask you to call up the Colorado Secretary of State office at 303-894-2200. 303-894-2200. Ask the Colorado Secretary of State, her office, because I'm sure she's probably not going to answer the phone herself. Just ask, when is the deadline to register to vote in Colorado for the November 3rd general election? Make sure you say it like that. When is the voter registration deadline for registering to vote in the November 3rd general election in Colorado? When is that deadline? What's the deadline? Because I don't see it here. I'm looking, unless I've missed something, and I could have. I don't see anything about where the deadline is. And these other states generally show you where that is on their web pages. And I've been able to identify all of them so far, but not Colorado's. Now, I will go and look again here. There is there is a calendar, but I don't want people to be scrolling through calendars. That is not what I want people to do, because that's just more anxiety, more stress, more wasted time. You don't need to be doing any of that. It's just not on. You don't want to do that. So, I don't know. I'm looking through this webpage right this second, and I'm not seeing an explicit, unless I'm missing something, an explicit look at when the deadline is to register to vote in Colorado. I don't know. Is there one? I mean, I would expect that there is. But again, I would ask you, therefore, to call the Colorado Secretary of State's office I would urge you to call the Colorado Secretary of State at 303-894-2200 and ask them, when is the deadline to register for the November 3rd general election in Colorado? Just ask them that question. And I think you should get an answer. In fact, I will call them. I mean, and I'll get you an answer. but you can call them too. You could do that as well, because I just think that those are things that are very important. So that, I mean, my advice to you right now, quite frankly, is to register right this minute. That's what I would do. Register right this minute. Do not wait. Waiting is not a good idea here. I mean, I'm telling you, you want to get on top of this as soon as possible, as soon as is humanly possible. Because, again, as I've cited throughout this episode, you want to be ahead of all the shenanigans. You want to get ahead of all of that. And it's a shame that we have to do that in this country, but hey, we do. And this is the thing. I think people get very cavalier about all this stuff and think that this is some kind of joke, but this is no joke. This is the kind of things we have to do. Here's what I promise you. I will come back and play you what Donald Trump said. And I promise to do that, and I will do it after this. Welcome back. So as promised, here is Donald Trump. Actually, this was March the 30th, 2020. That was literally 4 months ago. I mean, almost exactly 4 months ago. This is what Donald Trump said on Fox and Friends.
The things they had in there were crazy. They had things, levels of voting that if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again.
There you have it. There you have it. You'd never have a Republican elected in this country again. And what he was referring to there was the revamped election protection plan that was slipped into the coronavirus package. Remember this, back in March and April, there were some stimulus bills passed, some stimulus packages passed by the House and Senate. And one of them was in March that resulted in people receiving, or at least some people receiving, $1,200 checks. And I think there was another one as well, but there was a provision in one of them apparently that included the election protection, mail-in ballots or something. And because Mitch McConnell sat on his backside for a good, and still is sitting on his backside, blocking election protection bills, blocking the one that the House Democrats passed in 2019, which is still lying on Mitch McConnell's desk. And how dare Mitch McConnell even speak at John Lewis's lying in state in the U.S. Capitol. I mean, I thought that was an insult to humanity to have Mitch McConnell, who stood up in front of a Confederate battle flag once, and who also has repeatedly blocked voter initiatives and election protection initiatives. I've just told you about the two that he blocked. And and also has sat on this Emmett Till anti-lynching act with his Kentucky buddy Rand Paul sitting on it, and he's not telling Rand Paul to get up off his backside and sign that legislation and vote on it. Everybody else is agreed that there should be an anti-lynching act, and Rand Paul's the only one that doesn't. Racist Rand Paul. Moscow Mitch, he was looking around and he's had the nerve to speak with John Lewis lying in state feet away from him. I mean, my gosh, I think that does harm to John Lewis, don't you? But Donald Trump was talking there about a provision to his buddies at Fox and Friends that wouldn't allow Republicans, and what he was talking about was vote by mail. That's what it was. It was vote by mail. Vote by mail doesn't favor one party over another. It just doesn't. Oregon's been doing this for years. Their whole state is a vote by mail state. So in Oregon, when I get to the O state, Oregon, the O's, Oregon, Oklahoma, I mean, when I get there, I will be telling you it's all vote by mail. The whole state is vote by mail. Most of Washington state is vote by mail. And these are places that Donald Trump's got his Gestapo in. Washington State, hello. Oregon, hello. I want you to vote in person during a pandemic. I want you to vote in person with stormtroopers and Gestapo ready to snatch you up in the voting line while you're ready to vote for whom you're going to vote for. It's open voter suppression. Stop talking about performance. Oh, it's performative. It's fascist. It's tyrannical. We need to use stronger language here. And I love the scholars. God love them. But my goodness me, one of the things that happens with some scholars is they don't speak in this tough language. It's all academia, and the intelligentsia. There's a certain level of language speak that they do. And you need to be forceful. Some of these folks speak like some of the Democrats do. Flowery, prosaic language, prose. When what you should be saying is the bloody house is on fire. I mean, if your house was on fire and the flames were lapping up the sides of the house, you wouldn't be sitting there saying, oh, well, this is just a couple of sparks. This is a spark situation. There's going to be a little bit of white fog that smells a little bit. You may have a disruption in your lungs. And you may encounter difficulty smelling anything fresh. That's the way some of these folks on TV talk. When there is tyranny going on in front of your eyes. When you've got people with friggin', standing there, a wall of mums, mostly white mothers and Vietnam vets and veterans from all these wars standing there. People who are able-bodied, people who are not able-bodied, standing there saying, we don't want this fascism and tyranny here. Get it the hell out of here. You're not welcome here, you stormtrooping Gestapo MFers. You're not welcome here. That's what they're saying on the ground in Portland. That is what they are saying in support of Black lives. And by the way, again, the media is pushing the focus away from that. And I don't think some of these protesters are. I think most of these protesters are sticking with that. I see the signs. They say it in support of Black Lives Matter. In support of George Floyd and his family. And against these Gestapo thugs. These cops that executed George Floyd. They're against that. And you've got people on TV talking about, oh, well, this is performative. Oh, it's performative. Ooh, it's performative. You know what? Come on the ground in Portland and see how performative it is. Come on the ground in Seattle and see how performative it is. Come on the ground in Detroit and in Chicago and see how performative it is. Ask these residents in these cities, in Portland, in Detroit, in Seattle, in Chicago, ask them whether this is performative or not. See, come on, folks. I see pictures of people's, their heads are being cut open and all this kind of nonsense, all this kind of brutality, and I got to watch someone on television talking about this is performative. Come on, people. Enough of this foolishness. I want people on TV to come out to Portland and you tell the people in Portland whether this is performative. I want you to tell them that to their face. Or better yet, and safer yet, look on your darn TV screen. Enough of this nonsense. That's part of the problem too. Like I said earlier, you've got people trying to confuse you with this flowery language, and it's bad enough you've got the liar in the White House just outright gaslighting your ass. You've got to deal with these scholars, some of them, not all of them, some of them, talking about, oh, it's performative. And again, John Harmon is correct. I said this last week when I played the audio. John Harmon nailed it. This ain't just performative. It goes beyond that. In fact, it's not good enough to say performative. This is fascism. This is authoritarianism. This is tyranny. Stop talking with this language, this babbling language that really does not hit the nail on the head. Stop romanticizing this. I'm not saying that you are, but I am saying that you are at the same time. Because in some ways, even if you're not in that mindset, Stop being so academic. You know, there's nothing wrong with academics. I'm not an anti-intellectualist. I think it's very good to think. In fact, I'm someone who is a proponent of it. Critical thinking is really important. It's really good. Educate yourself. Read books. God knows I do. Read books. You know, analyze things. But my God, when you've got a house on fire, when your country's burning, and it's been burning for 400 years, by the way. You know, it was burning in 2018 and 17 when this clown, this orange farce, caged brown kids. It was burning then. You know, there wasn't too many people in this country who were pissed off about it then. But now finally some people, some white people, are waking up. Better late than never. Let's act. Let's respect John Lewis. Let's respect Coretta Scott King. Let's respect Amelia Boynton. Let's respect C.T. Vivian. Let's respect Joseph Lowery. Let's vote. And make sure it's an early vote. And if it's vote by mail, get aggressive and ask your Secretary of State when you are mailing out these ballots for November 3rd's election. And make sure you get one now. Demand one now. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.